My brother is having a third child, and so I am making some things to send to him. So we're going to be doing this burp cloth, which is just a normal burp cloth with a strip of flannel in the middle. And then we're going to do two different ones. They're going to be the same shape, so they're very similar. This is a flannel on one side and the burp cloth on the other, but the edging has been serged, so we don't have to flip and turn or anything like that. And you notice the shape has a curved shape right there, so when you throw it over your shoulder to put your baby up there, you have a little more coverage on the front and on the back for that baby, instead of having it kind of gather right here like a regular rectangular burp cloth would be. And then my third one is the same. This is going to be our sew and flip, where you have your fabric on the front, you have your burp cloth on the back, but we have seamed it in such a way that we had to put right sides together, sew it, clip the curves, turn it inside out, and sew it again. So it's a little more complicated, but the edges are a little nicer. And once again, it's still here in the curve, I call it the figure eight, kind of a figure eight shape here, so that it can fit over your shoulder and still cover you and your back for when your baby gets a little burpy. So anyways, let's get on to the project. Okay, to make the burp cloths, we need flannel. I thought this was a really cute flannel. These are going to be made for my brother, and they don't know the sex of their baby yet. This particular fabric has been washed. A lot of times when you buy stuff at the store, none of the fabric has been washed. That's why you always have to watch out when you buy new items, that they don't bleed and they don't shrink when you get them home to wash them, because the fabric's not pre-washed before garments are made. And so when you get into sewing, a lot of times you'll hear a lot of people, they always pre-wash their fabrics, home sewers do, because they try to take care of all the chemicals and sizing and shrinkage before they make the garments. That way, when they make the garments and wear them and then wash them, all the shrinking and the dye that might bleed and everything else, that's already taken care of before they even made the garment. So when you get fabric and you're making things for like babies, when you're making garments, when you're doing things like that, always pre-wash your fabric. Now, the fabric that you get for making bags and things like that, you can pre-wash your fabric still if you want to, but you don't have to. It's not as important at that point. But then at that point, it's also a personal choice. So I got this flannel here, which has little foxes on it, super cute. And I have my burp cloth, which is a normal burp cloth. This is one of the Guerra ones. I really like the Guerra burp cloths. I always have when I was raising my kids, or well, when my kids were babies, I should say. I'm still raising them. These were always one of my favorite, because once they get washed multiple times, they become softer and they're more absorbent. There's a layer of cotton batting in the middle, which becomes very absorbent, so that's always nice. However, if you don't like those, you can always get, I want to say they're called bird's eye. I don't have the label anymore. I think it's bird's eye cloth. It's kind of like, honestly, it's kind of like a cheesecloth to me. It's very thin and wispy. It doesn't have the cotton in the middle. It's just one big piece of fabric like this. Here, let me, there you go, like that. And usually what people do, they just fold them into thirds, and then that becomes your layers in your burp cloth. So I'm going to show you how to do it with, oh, I didn't realize I had three there, with this one, just because this is my favorite, and this is the ones that I'm going to send to my brother. If you wanted to use this right here, all you have to do is fold it into thirds. Wait a minute, wait a minute, I just had it. Oh, there it is. All you have to do is fold it into thirds, and you can cut it out into the same shape that we're going to be cutting on this one. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways, but you know, depending on what you like and how you like to do this, it's totally up to you. I'm just going to show you a couple of ways of doing it. So, first things first, we need our pattern. Okay, so I have my piece of paper here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my burp cloth and I'm just going to lightly trace around the burp cloth, just so that I can have a general idea. And what I'm going to do is grab my pencil, or sort of sharpened. I'm just going to lightly trace. But what we're going to do, we're going to cut out that little extra bit so that way it fits more comfortably on your shoulder and you have more coverage on your front and back, so when that baby drools or spits up on your shoulder, it'll catch it without getting creases. So we're going to take that, and you know what, I think I'm going to fold it in half here. No, I'm not going to fold it in half. Well, yeah, we should probably fold it in half, it'd be easier. So let's measure out. We'll say 13 inches. 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. So we'll go from this line and we'll say 6.5 inches. Here and here. And that's it. So we're going to fold this in half now at the 6.5 inch mark. So as we're doing this, remember it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection comes when you are making clothes, because then every little bit counts. But doing this is okay, because we don't have to have perfect dimensions for this. It's going to be okay. So this has now become half of our burp cloth. So this has now become half of our burp cloth, and we want to make an kind of like a S shape. So we're say, let's see, that's 6.5 right here. We want to do a small, we'll do 2 inches in. So that's going to be 4 inches right there. And let's see, we're going to fold this in half to get our middle ground. So this is where it needs to be. Alright, so did you guys see me? Did you guys see that? So this is what I did. We traced out around the burp cloth. We straightened out our lines and made them bolder so that we could actually see what lines we're working on. We then folded it in half. We just took measurements off of one corner here and figured out where the middle was. Fold it in half. Like I said, perfection is not necessary at this point. Fold it in half, and then we folded it in half again the opposite way so that we could figure out where the middle was. And once we knew where the middle was and had a crease there, we know where we're going to start our drafting. So remember, the part in the middle is going to be narrower than this part over here. So you're going for a figure 8 shape. So we're just going to sketch. Let's do some sketching here. It can be rounded if you want, like that. If you're happy with it being rounded. So if you like it like that, you can do it that way and do a rounded edge. Or if you kind of like the square shape, then you just kind of take it from here and bring it in. So honestly, the roundedness looks a little better. I mean, square is nice and everything, but it just doesn't flow as well. See, because the round just looks better. Square is just square. So I think we're going to go with the rounded shape. So now that we have our shape drawn out, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to fold it in half again. Matching up our little bits. At this point, we can tape it down and then cut out our pattern. And I think that's what I might do. Because that way, all we have to do, instead of tracing around the entire thing we're just going to trace this part right here and get it all cut out at the same time. But in order to make sure nothing shifts, I'm going to tape down the paper, because if it shifts while you're cutting, then nothing comes out even. So see, so just like that. And this is the shape that I'm going to cut out right here, because rounding is better. Well, rounding is better in my opinion. If you don't want to do round, don't do round. You do whatever you want to do. Okay, ready? So here we go. So this is the shape of your burp cloth here, and it's rounded on the edges. If you want to straighten it up and make it more rounder from this point, you can. I'm perfectly happy with this. It has a little kind of squaredness to it, but it's also rounded. I kind of like this a lot. And we're going to take this and we're going to cut this out of this fabric right here, and it should be a perfect fit. And we're not going to worry about adding seam allowances to this. So the seam allowances are going to already be included. So when you finally get done with the final product, it's just going to be just a little bit smaller, and that's going to be okay. And you know what? Let me share a tip with you. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pin the diaper cloth to the fabric, and then I'm going to put the pattern on top, and then I'm going to trace and cut it around all at one time. So I don't have to cut 2 layers at 2 separate times. It's all going to get cut out at one time. So let's do that. Okay, now that we have that done, what we're going to do is we can do a couple of things. We could do a couple of things. We could just go around and serge the edges if you have a serger, or if you like the overlock stitch on your sewing machine, you can just go around and do that. Or I'm assuming most of you do not have that option. So we're going to take this and kind of flip it over so that the foxes are facing inside, like this. So what we're going to do now, we're going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're going to go and do all the way around, but we're going to leave an opening at the end. So either end, it's okay. We're just going to leave about that much. So we'll say right there to right there. So I'm going to go sew this a 1/4 inch all the way around, from here all the way around to this point, and then we'll come back. Okay, now that I've sewn everything around the curves, if you've seen any of my other videos, or if you've sewn at all, you know when you hit a curve, you need to clip the curves before you flip it inside out, because otherwise it's not going to lay flat. So I'm going to clip my curves real quick. You clip to the seam, not through it. You don't want to clip through the stitches. You want to clip like right to it. Okay, once you have everything clipped, now you can flip it inside out. So you're going to use your tool here. You're going to use your chopstick or the tool that came in your bag of stuffing. It's just a long skinny wooden dowel. And you're going to use it and you're going to rub it against the seam line because it's going to poke everything out. So just rub it like that. Get everything into shape. Make sure you do all your sides. See how that one is? Oh no! Look at that. Do you guys see that? Look, do you see that? I missed the edge of the fabric. So when you're doing this and you see that, I have no idea how that happened, but I gotta go back and do it again. So that means I need to flip it all back out and go back and redo that corner. Oh, see? I got real close to it. Alright, so I'm going to go back and sew that up real quick, and then we'll flip it all inside out. I'll be right back. Okay, I fixed the corner, so now I flipped it inside out, and I'm going to do just like I was doing before. I'm going to use my dowel to push the edges out so that they will lie flat. So all that fabric gets pushed out. Okay, now once you have that, you're going to have this edge right here, the one where you flipped your edge through. And usually when you do that, everything will fold in just like that. Well, gotta fold that one in because it got caught. And then you'll either hand stitch it or you can seam it with your sewing machine and just close it out. But before we do that, we need to go iron everything. We need to make sure all of our seam allowances on the inside are being ironed flat, and that anything that pokes in like it's not supposed to gets straightened out and curved out. And then when we have all that done, we're going to go back and we're going to sew another 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, so that when you sew it down, you'll sew down the seam allowances here on the inside as well as close up that gap. But I think I might do that gap by hand just to close that up there and then do the seam allowance. But right now I'm going to go iron. So I'm going to go iron this and then sew up the 1/4 inch seam right here on the edges to sew down those seam allowances, and then I'll be back. I edged the bib with the seam so that way it would stitch down the seam allowance on the inside, and I hand stitched the closing shut using a ladder stitch. If you don't know what a ladder stitch is, just look at the iCard in the upper right hand corner and it'll take you to my hand stitching video, and I'll show you how to do that there. And so this one's all done. So we have the flannel on the front and the burp cloth on the back. So for our next one, throw that to the side. Our next one, I know a lot of people like to do this as well, where what they do, they take a strip of your flannel and they just sew it right here in the middle. And now we're going to do that one too. So we just want it here in the middle. So we're going to use the guides that the diaper already has. So if you look in it, you can see the layers and how they're stitched down. So all we're going to do is measure out that. So the layers is about 5 inches across, and that's 17, about 19 inches long. So all we're going to do is cut out a 6 inch by 20 inch strip. Ooh, put that over there too. So let's see, best way to do that, because I want to make sure that I have enough fabric left. I had a yard of fabric here. I want to make sure I have enough fabric left to make a bib and maybe a few other things for the baby before I send him out the package. So let's do this. So I'm going to try to use up as much of my fabric as possible. So I want to get as close to the curves right here so we don't waste anything if we don't have to. And I don't use the little edges right here that have no print on them. I cut those off, so I'm not going to count those. So get my marker back out. So I said what, 20 inches by 6 inches, I think I said. So there's 20 right there, and this is 5, so I need to add 1 more inch. Line it up here, 20 inches here, and line that up right here. So I'm going to cut that out. There. Put that aside again. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to lay this so you can see it when. Put this on top. Okay, so you see how this will fit in the middle? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck in the ends here. So that it looks nice. If it looks good to you, that's awesome. And then I'm going to pin it. Before we sew anything, we're going to iron it. So if you want to completely cover the middle, make sure you do so. Like I saw that part hanging out there. Make sure there's nothing. These burp cloths are never even. They're the most unevenest things ever. And so when you try to line things up, you're not going to succeed half the time because none of it's even. So you just do the best you can. And then you're going to do the same thing for the edges. Just going to tuck in the edges here so that it's all nice and neat. And then once you have your edges tucked in, you're going to pin those down as well. Do the other side. Okay, so now that I have everything pinned in place, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and I'm going to press it. I say iron it, but ironing is like when you do like this. But pressing is what we want to do. We want to press it with our iron like this. That way it doesn't shift the fabric out of any way. If you press it up and down like this, you'll still get the creases that you want, but you're not moving. Ow, ooh, poked myself with a pin. Wasn't paying attention there. Ouchie. But when you iron, you move the fabric like this. You don't want to move the fabric like this because you want it to stay right where it's at. So you press it up and down motion like this. You do that for your clothes after you've worn them when you're getting ready to go to church or something. But for this section right here, we're just going to press up and down with our iron. And I will be right back. I'm going to go do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I now have my burp cloth pressed. It's not perfect. There's still some wrinkles there in the but that's okay. I got my edges pressed like I want them to. So now I'm going to start on one edge and I'm just going to sew a square, or in this case a rectangle. I'm going to sew a rectangle, a seam about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I'm going to make sure I catch the seam allowances here on the edges because they're a little bit shorter than they are here on these edges, so I don't have to worry about that here. But on the shorter sides, I need to make sure I sew close to the folds so that I can catch the seam allowance and it doesn't pop out when it's time to when it's time to wash it. And you might hear noises in the background. That's my husband working in the garage directly underneath me. So I'm going to go sew this up and I will be right back. Okay, and here we go. We have this drop of fabric just sewn down the middle, and when you want to fold it up and give it to somebody, you do it just like this. And there you go. So there's number 2. So I'm going to do one more, except I'm going to use the serger. So that way, I think I'm going to do another one just like this one. So there's two burp cloths so far for my brother. And I'm going to do one last one. And I think I'll have just enough fabric left over for a bib. Okay, now that I'm done cutting that out, I don't have to worry about flipping anything over because my fabric's already right side up on the other side. So all I'm going to do is go to my serger and I'm going to serge the edges. Now, if you're using a sewing machine, up here in the upper right hand corner, I'm going to show you the stitches that will be needed on your normal sewing machine, which is, I believe, all basic sewing machines should have this particular stitch, and you can use this instead of a serger. It takes you a little bit longer. You'll have to sit down at your sewing machine a little bit longer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm going to go serge this, and I will be right back. Okay, and there you go. So that's a third way you can make diaper cloths. All I did was serge the edges, and there you go. So we have 3 different ways that you could decorate or create burp cloths for anybody that you know that are super simple and super awesome if you get matching fabric so that it all looks great together. So I'm just going to fold. As a matter of fact, I'm going to fold them all the same way so that they stack nice. So there's one. Do this one the same way. And do this one the same way. And there you go. Awesomeness right there for anybody who you know that has a baby or is adopting or anything like that. Hey guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me to the end of the video. Here I am doing my, well, what I believe is my Vogue modeling poses. I'm trying to show you how the baby cloth works. But the burp cloth, not the baby cloth. Anyways, I appreciate you hanging out here to the end of the video. I hope that you're able to enjoy this project and that you're able to make lots of burp cloths for friends and family. And I also hope that you subscribe to my channel. I also hope that you like this channel and leave me any comments below letting me know what you think of the projects. And if you have made some, hit me up on Instagram and hashtag Mrs. G Sewing Space so I can see the stuff that you guys are working on. And I'll see you in the next video.